Okay, I hope I'm audible to all students who are attending this lecture of public economics. We continue with our lectures on theories of the public sector. Okay, we continue with our lectures on theories of the public sector. And the book I prefer to follow for my lectures on theories of the public sector, this is Hendricks and Myers. Now, all students can recall that in the previous lecture of theories of the public sector, we were doing the bureaucracy model, and we had seen the optimization problem of a bureaucrat. Okay, the bureaucrat aims to maximize the size of its size, basically. Okay, we had seen in the previous lecture that unlike a private individual who seeks to maximize the monetary benefits, okay, on the other hand, a bureaucrat, being a public servant, will be taking into account the maximization of non-pecuniary or non-monetary benefits. Okay, so we had seen how the bureaucrat is going to increase its size of the bureau in order to achieve various non-pecuniary benefits. We had done that model in the previous lecture. Now, in this particular lecture, we intend to look at the next model based on budget setting. Okay, so let's look at this model. Each government department is headed by a politician who obtains satisfaction from the size of the budget. Okay, so every government department, let's talk about defense, let's talk about health and education, okay, let's talk about finance. So every government department is headed by a politician. Okay, and that politician is going to obtain the benefit from the allocation of the budget which will be received from the center. For example, if I talk about the HR minister, okay, and if I talk about the education minister, so these are all departments. The education minister will be responsible for all the education policies being framed in the economy. Okay, similarly, you are going to have the finance department who is going to take care of the taxation part of the economy. So every government department will be headed by a politician, and that politician is going to derive the satisfaction or the utility from the budget which will be allocated to that department. So the center will be allocating the budget on health and education. So the Minister of Health and Education will be getting satisfaction from the budget which will be received from the center for health and education, and so on. So furthermore, in many government systems, the budget for departments are determined annually by a cabinet meeting. The cabinet meeting takes the budget bids from individual departments and allocates a central budget on the basis of these bids. So every year, the cabinet meeting which happens before the main budget comes, in the cabinet meeting, it is decided as to how the center is going to allocate its budget to railways, to health and education, to foreign ministry, okay, to finance, okay, to infrastructure, and so on. So in the cabinet meeting, the main budget is allocated among various departments, and these departments are headed by politicians. Every department, a politician is in charge of every department, and the center will be allocating the budget to every department in this cabinet meeting. So you can think of the politician which is representing a bid. For example, if I talk about the Minister of Health and Education, the Minister of Health and Education is going to propose the allocation of the budget required for in the area of health and education. How much money or how much funding is required for the health and education in the coming financial year. So in the cabinet meeting, these politicians who are the heads of various departments are going to place their bids that my department needs this much budget. My department needs this much budget for further expenditures, and so on. And these budgets will be allocated by the center in the cabinet meeting. Okay, so let's look at the model behind this. Okay, so let the budget for year T be given by BT. Okay, and the budget claim for the year T plus 1 is given by, this is the claim. This is not the actual budget. This is the budget which is claimed for the period T plus 1, which is equal to 1 plus alpha times BT, where alpha strictly greater than 0 is the rate at which the departments inflate or increase their budget claims. So suppose we talk about the finance department or the finance minister. So the finance minister had a budget of BT in year T. Now, what is the claim he is going to make in the period T plus 1? So in the period T plus 1, the budget claimed by the finance minister will be somewhat 1 plus alpha T times BT, where alpha is going to tell you the rate at which the finance minister is going to inflate its budget. So you can think of it like this, that every year, the budget you claim is going to be higher than what you actually received last year. If I come to the whiteboard, I can write this equation. So we can clearly write that in our model on budget settings, we can write that BT denotes the actual budget received, in year T, and BT plus 1 C is the budget claim by the particular department. It can be finance department, railways, health and education, etc. So budget claimed by the particular government department for the year T plus 1. So the first equation we have learned here is that the budget claimed in the year T plus 1 is equal to 1 plus alpha times the actual budget received in the year T, where alpha is strictly greater than 0. So clearly, what do we learn? Clearly, every government department is going to claim a budget. Every government department is going to claim a budget in the year T plus 1, which will be higher than the actual budget, received by that department in the year T. So every government department is going to claim the budget in the year T plus 1, which will be higher than the actual budget received by the department in the year T, where alpha denotes the rate at which the budget is inflated. Rate at which the budget gets inflated. Okay, so if I quickly come back to the lecture note, let's further go into the depth of the model from the lecture note. So the meeting of the cabinet then takes these bids. So when the cabinet meeting is going to happen, where every minister is going to represent a bid that we need this much amount for the budget in the coming session. Okay, so what is the cabinet going to do? The cabinet is going to proportionately reduce them to reach the final allocation. Obviously, every member of the cabinet knows that the other member is inflating its budget. Okay, so when the center is allocating its funds among all the departments, be it railways, finance, health and education, infrastructure, and so on, the center knows this very well, that the ministers are coming up with the inflated bids. So the job of the center who is going to allocate the funds will be to proportionately reduce them. So now the actual budget allocated in T plus 1 will be 1 minus gamma times what was claimed. BT plus 1C was the budget claimed by the politician. But the actual budget with which the center is going to allocate will be less than what was claimed. Because there is going to be this adjustment factor. It's not possible that every politician speaks up an amount and the center is able to give that amount. That's not possible. The center does not have unlimited money. For example, if the railway minister says that I need 400-500 crores for my budget, the center can't just give 400-500 crores. The center is going to reduce this bid proportionately, depending upon how much is there with the piggy bank of the center. Remember, the center does not have unlimited funds. So it's not possible that any politician comes up and speaks up an amount, the center is able to give that amount. That's not possible. And the center knows this very well, that whatever budget the minister is going to claim will be more than what was claimed last year. The center knows this. So center is automatically going to manage that, okay, by making sure that the actual budget allocated to that particular department is less than what was claimed. So you can clearly see gamma lies between 0 and 1, and it is the rate at which the cabinet deflates each budget claim. Okay, so if I come to the whiteboard, I can quickly write the next equation. The actual budget allocated in the period T+1 will be 1 minus gamma times what was claimed, where gamma strictly lies between 0 and 1. Okay, so this is our next equation. So now what will be my budget in the period BT+1? So if I write BT+1, what will BT+1 be? So guys, you can clearly see that BT+1C is this much. This is my equation. If I plug it here, if I plug the value of BT+1C here, what do we get? This is equation 1, this is equation 2. From 1 and 2, I can write BT+1 is equal to 1 minus gamma times BT+1C is what? BT+1C is nothing but 1 plus alpha BT. Mark this as equation C. Okay, so what do we learn? If I erase the initial part, now, what do we learn from equation 3? Let us see what do we learn from equation 3. So if I write, so I can write from equation 3. Now equation 3 relates the actual budget allocated in T+1 to the budget which was allocated last year. The actual budget which was allocated last year, BT. Okay, and then we have case 1. If the rate at which the politician inflates its claim is more than the rate at which the cabinet deflates the claim, if alpha is more than gamma. What was alpha? Alpha is the rate at which the budget claim is inflated. At which the budget claim is inflated. And what is gamma? Gamma is the rate at which the cabinet deflates the claim. Deflates the claim which was made by the respective politician. So gamma is the rate at which the cabinet meeting is going to deflate the claim, and alpha is the rate at which the budget claim will be inflated by the fellow politician. Now we have the first case. If alpha is more than gamma, then this implies the budget will grow over time. You can clearly see that the budget is going to grow over time. If the rate at which the budget is increasing is more than the rate at which is getting deflated, the budget is going to grow over time. Okay, so clearly you can see that its development bears little relationship to the needs. Now, actually, is excessive budget actually required or not? That is not taken into account. What is taken into account? If the rate at which the claim has been made, if the rate at which the budget claim is inflated is more than the rate at which the cabinet deflates it, the budget is going to grow over time. Irrespective of whether the increased budget was actually needed by the economy. Okay, and then case 2, if the rate at which the budget claim is inflated by the fellow politician is less than the rate at which the cabinet deflates it, in this particular case, the budget will fall over. So all students are going to learn one very important thing. In this question, nowhere we are actually capturing the sentiments that actually whether the increased budget is needed or not. Remember, when the politician comes and speaks up in the cabinet meeting that we need more budget, we don't know whether the politician actually is going to use that increased budget for the required purpose or is just being corrupt. For example, if I am the finance minister and I am in a cabinet meeting, okay, and suppose I make a claim that I need so much amount for the finance expenditures happening in the country. Now, am I speaking the truth, or am I just speaking? Am I just bluffing because I'm going to use that money for my own personal gains or for the personal gains of my department? So this model is actually teaching us that the excessive budget is happening just because of the comparison between the rate of inflation and the rate of deflation. Actually, the factors responsible for whether more budget is needed or not are not taken into account. The model is not taking into account the fact that whether the economy actually needs more budget than before or needs less budget than before. Okay, so if I come back to the lecture note, so this model is over. So it was a very small and easy model. So it's telling us what? You can clearly see that the actual budget in T plus 1 is 1 minus gamma times 1 plus alpha times dt. Case 1, if alpha is more than gamma, the budget will grow over time. Its development bears little relationship to the needs. So there is every possibility that the expenditure will eventually become excessive, even if it initially begins at an acceptable level. Basically, the model is not capturing the fact that whether the economy actually needs this increased budget or not. Okay. And case 2, if alpha is less than gamma, in that particular case, your budget is going to fall over time. Okay. So this was another model which was explaining how the economy can have excess budget or excess role of the government, okay, even though it would not be required by the economy. You might not require more expenditure for finance or for health and education, but just because you go into the cabinet meeting and you inflate your budget, now if the rate at which you inflate your claim is more than the rate at which the center is going to deflate your claim, you are going to enjoy more budget for your department, even though actually you might not need it. Actually, you might not need that high expenditure. But just because in the cabinet meeting, you inflated your claim by much more than what the cabinet meeting deflated it by, you have more funds to enjoy. And God knows whether you will be using those extra funds actually for the development of your particular area, ministry, I can say, or you'll be using it to fill up your own pockets. That would be corruption. Okay, so you can see, then we come to the next thing, monopoly part. Now all this is interlinked. There are two reasons why equilibrium may not be efficient in case of the goods provided by the public sector. Okay, the first reason is that clearly all of us know that a public sector can act like a monopolist. There are certain goods which are provided solely by the public sector. The private sector cannot provide those goods and services. There are some goods which require marginal cost pricing. Obviously, the aim of the private sector is profit maximization. So there are certain commodities which only the public sector can provide, and that gives a monopoly part of the public sector. And all of us know from basic and intermediate microeconomics that the monopoly solutions are always leading to deadweight losses. They are not efficient. So a public sector can consider itself as a monopoly in the supply of its goods and services. Generally, a profit maximizing monopolist is always reducing its level of output below the competitive level. All of us have done the monopoly framework in the microeconomics courses, where we have seen that as compared to a perfectly competitive outcome, a monopolist is going to produce less output and going to charge higher prices than under perfect competition, thus leading to a deadweight loss. So the monopoly power will provide a tendency for too little government rather than the converse. Okay, if I go by this argument, it's going to lead to lesser government. Because if the government starts acting like a monopolist, it's going to produce lesser output, it's going to do less expenditure. If the government is attempting to achieve efficiency, then it will certainly not exercise its monopoly power. Okay. Further, since the government may not be following a policy of profit maximization, it might actually exploit its monopoly position to oversupply its output. Now, guys, the important point to understand is usually when we talk about a monopolist, if I come to the whiteboard to explain this point, okay, when I talk about a monopolist versus perfect competition, all of us have done this diagram in the basic introductory and intermediate microeconomics course. If I talk about the price quantity combination, this is quantity, this is price. Okay, this is my demand curve, also called the average revenue curve or the AR curve. Okay, and then we have the marginal cost curve. If I assume that the marginal cost is constant, okay, assuming that for simplicity my marginal cost is constant, and then I have the marginal revenue curve, MR curve. All of us know from microeconomics courses that MR curve lies below the AR curve. Okay, now under perfect competition, you are going to produce where P is equal to MC. This is going to be the competitive equilibrium. Price equal to the marginal cost. This is going to be the quantity under perfect competition. A perfectly competitive market is going to produce where the MC curve cuts the demand curve, which is at this point. This is the price under perfect competition. This is the quantity. But a monopolist is going to produce where MR is equal to MC. This is my MR. This is MC. This is the quantity produced by the monopolist. This is going to be, if I stretch it to the demand curve, this is going to be the price charged by the monopolist. And clearly all students can see that this area is nothing but the dead weight loss of monopoly. Dead weight loss from monopoly. All of us have done the standard diagram in our introductory and intermediate microeconomics courses. Okay, now the important point to understand here is, usually when we talk about a monopolist in general, that monopolist is going to produce lesser output and charge a higher price as compared to perfect competition. But if I talk about the government is going to do the opposite. The aim of the government is not profit maximization. Remember that. The aim of the private sector is profit maximization, but the government never has the aim to maximize its profits. The government is going to use its monopoly position to supply more than perfect competition, as compared to a normal monopoly which supplies less than perfect competition. A government is going to use its monopoly power to oversupply. Oversupply means supply more than what is required by a perfectly competitive market. That is what that point is trying to tell you. If I come back to the lecture note, all students can read this again in the lecture note. Read from here. If the government is attempting to achieve efficiency, obviously it is not going to exercise its monopoly powers, because we know that a monopolist leads to an inefficient outcome. It's not Pareto efficient, the monopoly outcome. So if the government's objective is to achieve efficiency, it's not going to act like a monopolist. But the government may not be following a policy of profit maximization also. So it might actually exploit or use its monopoly position for what? For oversupplying its output. That means if the government starts acting like a monopolist, the government is not going to reduce its output like a general monopolist does. If the government is going to use its monopoly power, it's going to oversupply its output, thus leading to excessive size of the government or the public sector. Okay, so if we move forward, all students can clearly see this. The second point, this monopoly power of the government may be extended to market capture. Many of the goods supplied by the public sector are complex in nature and not fully understood by those consuming them. Example, education and healthcare. In both cases, the consumer may not understand what product is nor what is best for them. The consumer may not, there are some commodities provided by the government which are very complex in nature. So the consumer might not be able to understand what is actually the product and what product is actually best for them. So the additional feature of the public sector commodities is that the demand is not determined by the consumer. Instead, it is delegated to specialists such as teachers, doctors, which are responsible for setting the level of supply. Most of the commodities which are provided by the public sector, they are not from the demand side. They are from the supply side. The public sector has its own doctors, has its own teachers, and they are responsible for setting the level of supply. So we can say many commodities provided by the public sector like health and education, they are not demand sided, they are supply sided. So supply is going to determine the demand. Demand is not going to determine the supply in case of many of the public sector commodities. So in this sense, they can be said to capture the market. So when the public sector decides, the public sector is not going to take into account what is the demand. They are just going to capture the market. So the public sector will be using its monopoly power to capture the market. On the other hand, a general monopolist produces less output and perfect competition and increases the price. But the government is going to use its monopoly power to do the reverse. The government is going to use its monopoly power to produce more than the competitive outcome and capture the market, instead of producing less than under competitive outcome. So the consequence of this market capture is that the specialists can set the level of output for the market that most meet their objectives. Since more specialists would benefit from the expansion of their operation of their profession within limits, this gives a mechanism that leads to supply in excess of the efficient level. Now, when the government has to decide, when the government or the public sector has to decide how much education should be provided or how much healthcare facilities should be provided, the government is going to leave it to the specialists. So how much education should be provided by the government? The government is going to leave it to the professors, lecturers, and teachers. Similarly, how much healthcare services should be provided? The government is going to outsource this or leave it. I can say the better word is leave it. The government is going to leave it to the doctors. Now, the government doctors or the government teachers or the government professors, they are going to use this authority given to them by the government to exploit their own gains. And there's nothing wrong in saying that. If the government, instead of taking into account what is the demand coming from the public, the government is ordering these specialists to set the level of supply. Look at the sentence I've just spoken. I'm repeating it again. The government, instead of taking into account the demand from the public, they order the specialists to set the level of supply. And these specialists are whom? Government doctors, government engineers, okay, government professors, government teachers. They are going to determine this. Obviously, if they want their own personal gains, they are going to increase the level of supply beyond what is the efficient level required by the economy. So hoping again all students have understood this particular mechanism. How the government uses its monopoly power to oversupply or to increase its supply than what is required by the efficiency level. Okay, so students, this is where I intend to stop in this particular lecture. It was a small lecture where the objective was to discuss with all students two models. One is the budget setting, where we have learned how excessive size of the budget depends upon the rate at which the ministers inflate their budget claim. And if that rate of inflation of the budget claim exceeds the rate at which the cabinet deflates the budget is going to continuously grow over time, even though the economy may not need that. And another thing is monopoly power. When the government recognizes, when the public sector recognizes its monopoly power, instead of producing less than the competitive outcome, which should usually be the case, the government exploits its monopoly power by oversupplying or overproducing. Instead of taking into account the demand from the public, they set the level of supply by ordering the specialists like government teachers, government doctors, etc. And these specialists, in order to enjoy their own gains, are going to supply more than what is required by the efficient level. So this is where I stop. We look at the model of corruption in the next lecture of public economics. Again, it's going to be a very important lecture. So I stop in this particular lecture. I hope all students have enjoyed this lecture. Any doubt, you can unmute your mics and ask, or call up or mail me your doubts at divineschoolofeconomics@gmail.com. So this is where I stop in this lecture.